Yeah, that's right. You read that title right, all you Lelouch loving people. Here's the thing though. I love him too. He's one of the greatest anime characters out there. We can't lie about that. But we have to face the facts about his revolution. He deserved to lose. From day one, he should have never succeeded, and it's very, very fitting that he doesn't. Also, as a side note, this video is only going off of Season 1, so anything that happens past that won't be included in this discussion, just as a heads up. So for us, the ending is Lelouch running away from the final battle and messing everything up, exactly like we all should have seen he would do. Now to start, it wouldn't be right to make a video about Lelouch's rebellion without addressing Suzaku as his counterpart. Now, Suzaku vs. Lelouch is a tale as old as time, and one I've mentioned before on the channel. Kantianism versus utilitarianism. These are two of the biggest moral theories that I'll summarize real quick since we've been over it before. Kantianism is generally the more natural of the two, as it states, the result of an action doesn't determine rightness, but the reasoning behind it does. So, for example, a doctor trying to save a patient but accidentally killing them instead would still be a right action because the intent was good and pure. Now, utilitarianism is more cold, placing the determination of rightness on the outcome rather than the reasoning. This is where we get the saying, the ends justify the means. It can also sometimes be stated or modified to the action that produces the most happiness for the most people. So in this doctor situation, they would have been wrong in accidentally killing the patient, since the outcome of their act created a net loss in happiness. Clearly, Suzaku is Kantian, where Lelouch is utilitarian. They even have some pretty direct lines to these extents. Lelouch is willing to take whatever actions further his revolution, because he believes the end will be a world much better than the one they currently live in, where Suzaku objects given the often quite brutal methods undertaken. Things get interesting when you start applying these theories to real actions and examining the consequences forever. Here, we'll be applying them to revolution. We'll start with Suzaku. He's respecting an inherent value to humans by refusing to change bloodshed with more bloodshed, and that is something very Kantian, the idea of inherent value to humanity. But this means we could call him a watcher more than anything, even if he is gaining influence from the inside. The more time his version of rebellion takes, the more Japanese blood is shed by the Britannians. His hands stay clean, he stays morally pure, but those around him get bloodier and bloodier by the day. And think about it, if the average Britannian soldier is killing more than one person, not unrealistic given the literal genocide they engage in, then is it still right to stand and watch as they rule? According to Kantianism, you should still simply act in strictly moral ways and just watch, but that only truly works if every single person follows it. One human acting against it would get no substantial resistance if they achieved a physical advantage above those acting in accordance with it. Stopping the murderer with murder would still be considered wrong. So the one person not following it gains a massive advantage. You can see that this all becomes a lot more gray in practice. Now for Lelouch, the utilitarian. His is much simpler to explain. Everything is worth it. Because in the end, he seeks to create a paradise where even the weak and sick could live in peace with no fear or conflict. He may take hundreds or even thousands of lives along the way, but he'll be improving the lives of millions after the fact. He'll be saving every subjugated nation from the rule of Britannia. The net happiness will be much higher afterwards. But this gets a little unsavory in practice. I mean, it's literal justification of murder here, which never really sits well. It's also entirely dependent on the ends, what the result of the action is. That means if he wins, his whole rebellion was right. But if he loses, then it was all wrong. And this is set into place the very moment he begins the action, the first time he resolved himself to take others' lives. If he would stop at any point believing what he was doing to finally be wrong, then he would have taken lives for nothing. Everything he did would become undeniably wrong. Killing Clovis, the landslide, the tanker, everything with Yuffie. So a utilitarian rebellion becomes a self-justifying action. To not mentally and emotionally destroy oneself, they would have to continue down the dark path they started, believing it would be worth it one day. This is why Lelouch struggled at the beginning, finding himself weak or almost vomiting at the realization of what he did. But there just is no turning back. What this could be boiled down to is the need for total devotion. To countenance oneself with the horror of their actions to ensure that the right action is achieved in the end. And that all the lives lost weren't for nothing, both friend or foe. The rebellion isn't what your life is about. It is your life. It has to be. If it's not your entire devotion, then all you do is increase the odds of it being murder for pure murder's sake. And this is where Lelouch falters. He certainly gave up parts of his life and made his day-to-day harder once he became Zero, but he was never willing to give up everything and become the revolution. I mean, the contrast in his life is almost comical at points. This mysterious, enigmatic figure leading a Japanese rebellion from a few members to a nationwide movement, stealing Britannia's technology, assassinating their leaders, and all secretly as the deposed prince of the very nation he seeks to destroy, while he's dealing with the ins and outs of a usual life at school. Crushes on him, planning events for the student council, being forcibly dressed up as a cat. It's a great element for the story, that contrast, but a terrible one for someone planning a bloody rebellion. What it really shows is that Lelouch is unfit to truly be the leader of it. He's not willing to take the full cost of it onto his shoulders and give up what he has to. He's dancing in some weird in-between where he's still a student and still Zero. To really fully commit to his rebellion, he would have had to cast all of that aside and give up being Lelouch to become Zero. Without the 100% all-in mentality, it's likely that all of the loss will be for no gain, something that shouldn't even be a fleeting option in his head. And why is this? Why is it that he could never fully commit? Well, his heart was never in the right place to begin with. His ends were always truly selfish, no matter how pure they may seem. Nunali, to create a world where she would be safe and sound, never fearing for what may come. A gentle world. But not for people like her, not for the Japanese or for the other oppressed people around the world. Only for her, the one closest to him. They might benefit from it, sure, but this is for his sister alone. And adding a bit more onto that, he also wanted revenge against his father, the emperor of the Britannian Empire, who didn't care for their mother, cast them out once she died, and used them as simple bargaining chips to help ensure his rule. I don't think it's really possible to blame Lelouch for these motivations in any other situation. All he wanted to do was protect the one person he always had there for him in Nunali, his sister who could never protect herself anymore, so he had to step up and do it for her, no matter what. And to take something back from the man who let it happen to her, then did nothing to help after the fact or ever. I get why these are his motivations. But for him to keep so close to these self-focused goals, even while he was playing with the lives of so many, with the dead beneath his feet, all it did was make him more susceptible to failure. It gave him a weakness, one that would not only stop him, but the whole army he had created right in their tracks. A single shot to him that killed everyone relying on him and made all of the loss for nothing. And we see this exact thing happen in the final episode. Nunali gets kidnapped, and he leaves behind the entire rebellion, all of the work put into it and everyone believing in it to go save her, his selfish reasoning. The worst nightmare of his revolution comes true. This is gonna be harsh, don't get me wrong, I know it's gonna be very harsh, but he shouldn't have gone to save her. In doing so, he threw away so many lives, both new and old, that believed in his cause and fought against it alike. Everything that happened became useless in that moment. Not just what he did, but what everyone did. It's the toughest choice one would have to make, but that's the cost of a bloody revolution. And when he falters, who's there to make matters worse for him? The very symbol of his weakness, Suzaku. Because Suzaku shows perfectly how uncommitted Lelouch was even before this moment, that he was always weak to his past. In episode 18, he orders Suzaku to live, against all the odds as the Avalon is about to obliterate him and Lelouch alike. A man truly willing to accept any cost would have let Suzaku die right there, or ordered him to save Lelouch at the cost of his own life. Even more so, he should have ended his former friend's life much earlier than that. He knew Suzaku was Lancelot's pilot, the one person who had and was capable of stopping Lelouch's military advance and weakening his forces, a near constant thorn in his side that assisted the great evil they sought to destroy. But he can't bring himself to let go. Whatever connection they had should have been void for him the second the honorary Britannian chose to return to the Empire. Would anyone else have been able to just walk away from Zero like that? To create a narrative counter to his rebellion? This is all just another case that shows how Lelouch wasn't so much fighting for a future as much as he was fighting against his past. The other area where Lelouch gets some points docked from his, what we'll call Makishima score, is based on how manipulation heavy his plan is. A large part of this is the blind faith he requires from those around him. He's not Lelouch to them, but the mysterious Zero who maintains faith by proving his power to lead the rebellion. The masked man that commands from behind the scenes, like the king piece in a weird chess analogy. And there's a reason they make that point, having him move the chess pieces during his first assault on Britannia and other moments in the anime. Because he didn't find a group of kin he shared feelings with, but he found pawns. Pieces to be used for the goal he always wanted since he was a child. This was his opportunity to finally make that dream come true, and he did so on the backs of others. This blind faith runs deeper as well into his hidden identity, knowing that revealing himself to be a Britannian would weaken his support because he clearly wouldn't have the same kinship and experience they do. He has to remain a symbol of everything they feel, and he can't do that if he reveals his true self. At least not at first. Once they bought into Zero, he was able to. I'll also give him a break on the chess analogy because he does later get more directly involved, even in inferior attack, which maybe he shouldn't have done because he gets his ass handed to him a lot by better nightmares. But it is actually badass that he gives Gurren Mark II to Callan and heads out in an outdated nightmare. And then he steals goddamn Gawain and pushes Britain's shit in with their own mecha mega machine like some goddamn supreme being! Okay, back on track. No matter what small deductions we can chip away from these points though, it's clear they still stand. Look at the final episodes and his treatment of Ogi in his position. When shit hits the fan, one of his most loyal supporters and critical members of the rebellion gets taken out of the game, and there's not even a shred of thought put into it by Lelouch. Just that they'll find a replacement for him. He has higher priorities right now. Above the final battle and sure as hell above Ogi. Because at that moment he's not a man, just a pawn in Lelouch's game. And when his longtime supporter fails, the man who wanted him to be the leader falls, who rises up? Dethard, his head of information, espionage, and public relations. The man whose existence is story, narrative, and manipulation to fit a cause. The man who delighted at Yuffie's massacre because it was going to be such a great narrative for them. The one who understands Zero the most. He knows right away what really happened to the JLF tanker. He knows why Zero entered the scene like he did to save Suzaku. He's the first one to call out Lelouch's thought processes every time, because he understands manipulation and narrative just like the leader of the Black Knights. And it's no mistake that one of the least sympathetic and most corrupt characters is the most similar to Zero. And making his case even worse, he has no real allegiance except to catch as much attention as possible with his story. And that's all Zero is to him, the biggest story out there and the one that will captivate the audience. That's why he turns on Britannia to follow the enigmatic man, and I think that says a lot. One of the highest up in the Black Knights doesn't actually care about the Black Knights at all. And this is something Lelouch is perfectly fine with. That manipulation and narrative control is far more important to him. That's why they take on missions to become the saviors of the oppressed. That narrative is a strong one to place him in an even better position to overthrow Britannia, and that's all saving the oppressed really ever meant to him. And after all, manipulation is how it all started with his Geass anyway. The ultimate power to manipulate, and the one reason he was able to get as far as he did. A man fighting for selfish goals with borrowed power in a self-justified cycle of bloodshed. Now, please don't take any of this as Code Geass sucks or Lelouch sucks, because both are downright amazing. Code Geass has some of the few moments in the anime that have actually dropped my jaw to the floor or got me legitimately excited for a villainous protagonist again. I mean, watching him defeat a Britannian commander for the first time in Clovis as the Britannian losses pile up and Lelouch gets even more and more excited, seeing his goal within reach finally is amazing. And the Yuffie moment is downright shocking and paced perfectly, culminating his entire journey so far and encapsulating the very essence of the utilitarian revolution we talked about here. I knew it wouldn't end peacefully there, but fuck, my jaw still hit the floor. Overall, one hell of an anime and one of the greatest characters ever. If you know any other anime with characters like Lelouch or like Makishima if you've seen Psycho-Pass, please let me know down below because I need more. But I'm gonna still die on the hill I started in this video that he never deserved to win. Maybe I'll change my mind once I get through season 2 and possibly make a video on that, but that's for the future to decide. What we're gonna decide right now is the plugs at the end of the episode. That was a terrible transition, but we're gonna stick with it. Link to my Discord in the description below if you want to reach me directly, chat with some other anime fans, hang out, just some general cool stuff going on down there. Leave a like or dislike depending on how you felt in this video so I can know what to make in the future. And you can also leave a comment letting me know what you thought about Code Geass, any other anime recommendations, what you want to see in the future. Anything you want to drop down below there is greatly appreciated because I like talking to all you amazing people in the comments down below. If you're new here, consider subscribing for more videos like the ones on screen right now, or just check out a few more and make your decision from there. Anyway, I was about to start rambling, so I'll just stop before I do, let you get back on with your day, and just say thank you for watching, and I hope I'll see you again soon. That was a somewhat competent outro, I guess.